I'm here with Tom Harris from White Sky. Good to see you again, Tom.
Trev.
Why don't we start off and have a bit of a chat around the origin story of White Sky? Why did you start the business? What did you see was happening in the marketplace? What inspired you, and what were you trying to achieve when you set out on your journey?
It was a while ago now, so it was the GST had just come in. That was probably the catalyst. How old it is? Probably GST was probably a year or two old.
So there was suddenly 2000s then, yeah?
Yeah, 2002.
Yeah.
And I think GST came in 2000. So so there was suddenly a need for bookkeeping, particularly in small businesses, micro businesses like the music industry.
Change.
It was, yeah, and it was so it sort of meant that bookkeeping sort of went from chucking all of your stuff into a shoebox and the accountant dealing with it at the end of the year, went to needing to lodge quarterly reports and being on top of it a bit more, and so there was a bit of a need there. I was kind of I thought a lot about the brand in those early days. I thought a lot about what sort of almost more about what the business was going to sort of be rather than what it was going to do.
Yeah.
And so I purposely chose to have sort of like an abstract name because I knew I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to start the business. I knew how to do this bookkeeping stuff. I'd picked it up, here or there. I knew how to lodge, how to fill out a BAS form, and so but I knew that I wanted to do something more. So I didn't want to call it, something bookkeeping or something, whatever. I just wanted to keep it really vague.
So how was the evolution in terms of targeting the music and the entertainment industry? Was that always on your mind in the beginning?
Well, it was. I was 26 when I started it, so I was pretty young, and I was, very into music, still am, and I was going to see bands every night, and I was, it was sort of my life. So I wanted to sort of work in that industry.
Yeah.
So that was where I kind of saw the niche. I also wanted to have a niche. I wanted to have something to sort of leverage off, and to sort of say this is the point of difference all along, is sort of be able to sort of define it. I kind of figured that would make it more clear which clients were I was suited to. So I got my first music industry client. I was an indie record label called Rubber Records.
Cool.
And I just there was an ad in Beat magazine, and
magazine,
a music magazine.
Wow.
And for a bookkeeper, it's a tiny little thing. And a mate of mine showed it to me, and I was so I went in, got the job, and that was how it started. I was working in there one day a week, and that's how I sort of met people in the music industry and built connections and.
So my takeaway out of that conversation or that piece was you really focused on what the purpose of the business was.
Yeah.
You really thought really carefully around the brand and something that would create a cut through, and you sort of aligned it with a passion or an area of interest.
Yeah.
And were you thinking about a market type or a type of client that would probably need the service as well, that maybe wasn't as sophisticated or as advanced? Apologies to all my music industry friends out there, but there's a certain need in that space.
No, I didn't really know anything about the music industry.
Wow.
So I didn't know anyone who worked in the music. So I just figured that there are bands. Someone must be doing this stuff. I wanted to work music, so I just started telling people that's what I was doing, and then got that one leg in, and then I just had to sort of wing it from there.
Yep.
Like I said, it was because I didn't sort of define the business in its name or anything. I was able to just go with it, and that's kind of where that was a good thing, because it meant I was able to evolve and opportunities come up, and as I learned what clients I got, when I realized what their needs were, I was able to go, okay, we'll do that then, and along the way. I almost went in various different directions. It was a time then when we had clients asking if we could book their travel arrangements for their tours, and it was like that's a need. That's clearly they need that. Maybe we could do that. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't go down that road there.
No, things have sort of changed there. So it was important to be sort of curious, to be agile, and to be aware, and to be able to flex. So.
That's how I did it. I didn't sort of. I know some people start a business and they got a really clear plan and a timeline. And but I was far more just like get in there, do it, and just adapt solve problems.
It is
you
a
go.
trait that we do see at BlueRock around successful entrepreneurs. They do have a habit of taking action early. There is a benefit to planning, but there's also a very strong benefit to actually doing and getting things going and learning from some of your mistakes, but also picking up the opportunities that come in early from that. So what were the early days like for you? Like when was employee number one on board, or how were you working, I guess?
So I was working I was living in a share house with a couple of mates.
Yeah.
I saw the niche. I was studying filmmaking at the time as well, so I actually wanted to be to be a film director.
Cool.
And this was and doing this was really just sort of something to do on the side while I made
side hustle.
That's sort of how it started out. It turns out I was a better business manager than I was a film director. And
I'm going to ask you about your filmmaking and if you're watching anything at the moment. So keep going.
It predates YouTube, so there's nothing up there.
You might have missed an opportunity there on YouTube.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, I started working with this indie label. Ended up working. Rented a seat in their office, all downstairs in one of their sort of spare rooms in this little dungeon basement kind of thing.
Yeah,
and then it just got so busy I guess I sort of I just tried as hard as I could to do a good job. That's all I was trying to do. I was just working late and long hours and weekends and just doing everything and just trying to go above and beyond every opportunity to sort of I think it came from I genuinely wanted to help the clients. I genuinely cared about them and what they were doing. Yeah. So I was like a yes and kind of mentality. It's like, what more can I do? I can do this. I was doing more than just bookkeeping. I was turning up at the gigs and helping to get things set up, doing whatever needed to be done.
So you must have been really stretched.
I was, and that's sort of what then I sort of realised I need someone to help me with this, and I was only a young guy, and I didn't the idea of hiring someone was crazy, but I was put an ad up on Seek or something, I think was what happened, and got a guy, Jason, who's still mates with today. He worked with, he was at uni, and he was working one day 2 here or there. And just helped out, and then sort of just went from there. And then you need another person.
Yeah. And were there any other challenges that arose during that sort of that I think initial period for you?
Yeah, for sure. I think there was endless challenges.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I just thinking about that hiring people thing.
Yeah.
The transition from going from doing all of the work yourself, every single thing, to delegating systems and processes. When you're doing it yourself, you just know what to do. You just do it, and then suddenly you've got to teach someone else, and you've got to realize that people think of things differently, and so that was a huge challenge early on. Is having particularly probably because I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't sort of planning for it. It just sort of happened, you mentioned learning from mistakes. It was this, I've made every mistake possible. I've just I
think a lot of successful people, that's part of the journey, right? You make a few along the way.
Bumbled my way through it, and learned as I went, and that was and just trying to find good people, trying to keep them happy and engaged. It sort of became more and more of the job as opposed to actually doing the work.
Yeah. And so how did you go about attracting people to the business?
I leaned heavily into the music side of things. That was it. That was was the appeal of working in the music industry. I had this idea that I just sort of like there are people out there like me who love music and are good with numbers, and that was that was the premise. So it was like, if you're a music lover who's got a good head for numbers, this is where you belong. And so, just without really sort of thinking about it, it created a culture of a lot of a lot of people who got along. It was a really good culture. No dickheads. Kind of concept. Everyone's sort of on the same page, here for the same reasons, passionate about what we're doing, and passionate about helping the clients.
Yeah. Was there a point when it was just became a little, it feels like a cult? There, Tom. Yeah. But at some point, a cult needs to sort of start to shape up in terms of cults don't like these things, but like an organizational chart or a structure or those sorts of things. Was there a period where you've gone, hang on, we actually have to start to put a bit of, alignment around these things?
I did. I kind of they kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. Like it was like
have I just rubbed you?
No.
But
Cool. But the idea of the cult thing, it was sort of like. Okay. But the other part of that was like is the idea of a family. I always cringe when people. And no offense to it, but when companies try and sort of say we're like a family, I said no. Your family is more important than this. This is work, but it can still be good. It can still, So I kind of didn't want to sort of label it, the culture as anything other than what it really was. But it was a great place to work where people enjoyed coming to work and believed in and were passionate about what we were doing.
So you're starting to bring people into the business. You're starting to put some systems and processes in. You're starting to kind of have to think about how to organise and align and onboard and those sorts of things. What were the other signals that you sort of knew what you were doing or the direction that you were heading was working? Were there some sort of turning point moments along the way where you've gone, holy shit, actually something's happening here?
I can't think of any specific moments, but there was from a client side and the service, it was very early. It was because it grew quite quickly. Like I said, it was sort of a side hustle for a couple of years. But once I sort of started focusing on it fully, and I realised there was a real need for this, and I was good at it, and I could do it, and people were telling other people, and they were, it's getting people come to me because they'd heard about me from someone else. Once that started, so then I realised this is a thing, and that's where I sort of had the confidence to hire, to hire staff to help me. But the other big turning point I think was when it got to a sort of a point. I think it's probably around about 20, 25 staff is when it got to that point. Like it sticks in my mind because it's like the size of a classroom. It's just like, and I think that once it got to that point, everything kind of changed because because I kind of thought.
How many years in was that?
Was that probably maybe about 8, 9, 10 years, something like that.
Okay, it took a while. Starting around 2010, GFC, that type of.
Maybe, yeah. I'd have to go back and have a look, but it got to this. I kind of thought, I think naively, but maybe because I was young, in those early days, that my role as the leader was to be the fun guy, the kind of let's all go out for drinks, whatever, and whereas once it got to sort of bigger and I realised the people here, they're not just here for a good time. They're not just here for a laugh. They're here because they want to build a career and they want to. And then I felt this enormous responsibility.
And their lives are depending on, in part.
I had staff like buying houses. We're getting a mortgage out based on their job, and I was just like, shit. I can't let this has to work now. This has to become something more. Like more than just. I guess a really big side hustle. And I was pretty.
There's a little bit of pressure in that, isn't there?
There was, yeah. I mean, you would think that I would have thought of that earlier on, but I was just naively just doing it, winging it. I had little businesses on the side doing other things at the time, and then I kind of felt this responsibility too. And then that's where I think around about that time, I decided I'm not doing any client work at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did your leadership style or management style have to sort of evolve through that period?
And huge change. I went and did a leadership course actually,
cool.
Which was like a 3-day thing, retreat, and it was, it just changed because I'd never really. Leader. It was another one of those words that made me cringe. It was just like, I'm not a leader. I'm just a guy doing something.
So we're taking family off the menu. We're taking cult off the menu. And we're taking leader off the menu.
Yeah. Well, not anymore.
No,
but it's like
you're a fantastic leader.
Now I embrace it. But it was really that was the turning point where it was. Whereas it went from like not wanting to think of myself in that way to say, no, this is who I need to be, and this is what kind of leader I want to be, and this is the kind of company I want to have, and I relied on I had some good mentors. I probably didn't lean into those as much, but I also had some great staff and some who taught me a bit, what was honest with me, had good open honest feedback. Dialogue, And so I was able to sort of, we kind of together created the culture and everything. And those guys are still around today.
Can you remember through that period where you moved to be classroom size and you're evolving as a leader and the business is building? Was there a moment? Can you think of the biggest risk you took at that period or something when you went, holy shit, this really needs to work out?
Yeah, I think it was probably there was a point where we kind of moved into a bigger building.
Yeah, it's
and
often about the premises and the commitment to the lease,
I
isn't
hired
it?
a great operations manager, to sort of to handle this stuff. I kind of really sort of stepped back and I spent a lot of time sort of on weekends and nights like writing out the mission statement of the company, the values, and all of these. Sort of living in that space a lot.
Yeah,
and so with that, it was sort of like, okay, I'm going to do this, and to do that, is sort of the risk is that you are counting on things continuing as they are, the growth continuing, the staff, the clients, the reputation, the brand, everything sort of staying pretty consistent, and more or less it did. So it worked out well.
Yeah, and so how many people in your team now?
It's about, I think we've got about 35 in Australia and about 15 in Manila now.
Wow. Okay. So if you had to think about that period where you went all the way through, took that big risk around scaling and size and starting to put some infrastructure and investment in there, would you have any pro tips for people out there around things to make sure, things you've reflected on and gone, either I wish I did that or I did that, but I didn't realize how that was exactly the right thing?
I think I was really just winging it. And so so my pro tip is, the first thing that comes to mind is plan it out really well, budget everything. Yeah. But I didn't do that, so so it's just, so I don't know if I can really say that's the way to do it. I think it's probably more just,
we would say that to clients now, but it doesn't. It's a bit iterative, isn't it? Right?
It was, I guess, the way I did it.
Yeah.
Whether this is a tip for anyone else, whether I would recommend it, is I just backed myself. I just said I can do this. I just had this, although I was, at the same time I've, got an imposter syndrome and this is way bigger than I ever imagined. This is way big, there's all of that going on. But at the same time, I kind of knew whatever happens, I'll be able to handle it. I'll be able to, I'll do okay. So I'll just,
and you'd obviously, just from my observation of meeting with you and spending some time with you over the past sort of year and a bit now, I think one of the things you did really well was you identified talented people early and built a team around you. It was one of the things that when we met you and your team from White Sky, that was really impressive. So how did you go about building that? I think it's a core group of at least, there's a lot of people in your community, your business now that helps you be successful, but there's those 8 or so there that are really, they're super strong leaders and advisors in their own right. So how did you do that?
Well, I'm very lucky that I've found those people and that they have, that we've all stuck together. But I guess the realization, this was sort of part of that transformative sort of part where things sort of change, was the realization that when I was saying these guys this is a serious career for them. This is this isn't just something fun to do to make some money. I kind of thought of it in the early days. This is like a serious thing. I realized also these guys need to be continuously challenged, supported, and coached, on, and they need to be taught how to do that for the next generation or the next wave or the next level. And so really just trying to teach leadership in people, trying to create a company full of leaders, and so everyone's, if you can do that, which is I'm not saying that that's what we've achieved, but that's sort of the goal, is everyone's learning from everyone, everyone's continuously challenged, and that's probably a good segue into how we ended up with BlueRock. It was sort of, the music industry is pretty small as far as industries go. And we White Sky has been the biggest at what we do for a long time. We're kind of the first to really start in providing the business management, service in the music industry, and grew. So the growth has obviously slowed down for the last few years because you can only get so big in a tiny industry. Yeah. But that core team wanted to keep on growing. They needed to keep on developing and being challenged and advancing in their careers. So we looked at wanting to sort of diversify and grow, but we also just loved the music industry and we didn't want to change that part of it. And so we had a very specific need when we were going out to sort of look, meet with businesses to look at who we'd partner with or be acquired by, or whatever the deal was going to look like. It was really about something that where we wanted to sort of partner with a firm that could help us continue to grow while still retaining our music industry roots. So it was pretty, and we met with lots and lots and lots of businesses and some great ones, but we were very specific, and we were lucky. BlueRock, we're excited by what we wanted to do, and could see that, being able to sort of have our cake and eat it too. Could sort of see that opportunity. So it's,
and there was something interesting when I met you and the team. There's a saying that you and I've been talking about a little bit lately, is that in business, for scaling businesses, part of the challenge is you actually can't outgrow your leadership capability.
Yeah.
And we saw ourselves coming together with you, with the leadership team that you'd built and some of the deep skills and expertise, that it was actually a really complementary moment to actually share some of that leadership. We had a broad client base, lots of sort of diversity maybe in the types of people that we work for or businesses that we work for, and there was a set of skills around leadership that you'd built. So that was kind of a good synergy. But just before we go to our the BlueRock part of the story, or where you're at now and what you'd like to kind of see where you want to take the business, tell us about the importance of sort of systemized approaches as businesses get larger, because that was one of the things that were impressed us about your business when we met, is that you have invested in times in sort of one way, same way, and the ability for your business to scale.
Yeah, well, it's sort of similar to what I was saying before about sort of stepping back as the founder and letting go. Like I kind of, and I kind of needed to. I wanted to get White Sky to a point where it could operate without me. I kind of. Someone said to me once in the early days when I was working long hours and stuff, that if you start a business and you're working that sort of hours, you haven't founded a company. You're just self-employed and working. It was like I wanted to change that. I wanted to actually step back and say this thing can run without me, and that there's sort of two major parts to that. There's the having the leaders in the company to step up and to be able to take things on as a sort of succession plan, and having good people that you can rely on, as well as having the systems and clear out, design the business in a way, whether it's role definitions or certain ways to provide the service, or value proposition, having a real clear understanding about what is the value proposition of the business. These things. It's not just about governance and having all those things in a row. It's really just about setting things up so that you can sort of step back and go, there it is. There's the company.
Did that slow you down along the journey there when you actually started to try and build that, or were you sort of building the plane and flying it at the same time?
It started off as what I thought it would be a temporary thing. I thought we just need to set up these systems and do this, and then we'll be fine.
Let's go.
But I realized, it's never ending. You need to. It's constant. You need to be constantly reviewing and improving your processes, and you're constantly retraining your staff. Regularly, developing new opportunities for the staff to grow and develop.
Every time you scale, it's sort of like there's another thing that needs to be built, right? Or another thing to put in place.
And it's but it's not in stages either. It's just constant. It's that constant changing, constant improving here, there, and everywhere. And you sort of like, after a while, you realise certain things haven't been improved for a while. You pull out some old document and go, geez, this needs an update. We've changed a lot. Or look at the website. It's sort of like needs some tweaking. So it's having those systems in place started off as this is something that needs to be done, like it was a project, and then it just became part of the DNA of the company,
DNA of the business and the way it works. So you've achieved a lot. Is there anything that you kind of, when you sit back and reflect, and we're on another phase of the journey together now, and but is there some things that you look back and go, okay, these things are really what have made us successful? Some of the successes that you're most proud of?
Yeah. I think it's that culture. I think it's the type of business that White Sky is, unlike our clients' businesses. We don't win awards or get, record sales or get. There's no metric, to sort of say unless
there's
you
not
sort
an
of
ARIA for being a great business manager.
You could sort of use financial metrics. We hit this target or there's a turnover or something like that. But really, I think it's about the thing that I guess I'm most proud of with the company is the culture, is the people in it, and the way that when new people come to the company, they can see it and feel it straight away. And that gives me enormous joy and makes me very proud.
It does bring longevity into a business, having a way of work and a way of thinking.
I guess it does. Sometimes I wonder. I guess it's had longevity so far, but whether it will last on for another 10 years or more, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, perhaps the trick is just how much you've actually invested that and been aligned with the leaders and the people coming through the business. And I see you doing that a lot with your team. So where to next? What are we going to do next together, or what's the hope or the goal for you and the team?
I think it's been a year now since we moved into the BlueRock building, and we genuinely couldn't be happier. I was really thinking moving from a cool office in a warehouse in Collingwood into the Rialto building in the city. I thought
sounds quite different, warehouse. This is going to corporate building.
It's going to be a big change for everybody, and we'll probably lose some staff, and it won't be for everybody. Yeah, but that's just not happened at all. Everyone's really enjoying it. Everyone's really enjoying the challenge. We've sort of kept the culture going, and now we just want to sort of. And we're working really well with the BlueRock team. There's so many great people at BlueRock in all the different service lines and divisions, and we're just building those relationships. And
I think now's our opportunity to go for another scaling piece, which we're going to kind of have to learn and pick up on all those things that you talked about. So I don't know. It feels like the old sort of bit of a corny, cheesy question, Tom. But if it's 2000 and you think back to 2002 or 2003. Yeah. When you were starting this business out, is there anything that you'd sort of try and advise yourself or to do differently, or what's a piece of advice out there for people starting out or scaling up, trying to scale up their businesses right now?
I'm so nervous of giving advice because I feel like
you've achieved a bit now. You've earned the right to share some stuff.
I've often sort of half joked that if I knew how little I knew back then, I wouldn't have had the guts to start the business in the first place. Yeah. It was really just that back yourself kind of thing. So I suppose if there's a piece of advice to is to back yourself and don't underestimate your own value. I think a lot of founders do that. I think a lot of founders sort of forget that, because when you start off, you're sort of saying yes to everything, doing whatever, and it sort of gets to a point where, where you need to sort of factor it in, look at the business and look at the financials and make sure that this is actually all worthwhile, because it's a huge amount of work. And I guess the other part, sort of like I touched on, is that difference between working in the business and working on the business. That they
Take
really
the time
think
to step back and think about that.
I know too many people who start a business who just work their guts out and they just feel trapped. They're just they're just stuck in this business. And I was like that for a long time as well. And and it was really hard to sort of pull out. And maybe I look back now and go, it'd be good if I did that earlier. Whether or not that would have worked, don't know. But if I was to if I was to go back and start a business similar, now, that's how I would do it.
Yeah,
I would
you'd back yourself, and then you'd sort of look for that moment to actually bring others in and create that thinking time and that space for you to be driving the business.
Yeah, because you can't underestimate how much time all of that stuff takes, and that's not just sitting around scratching your head thinking about great ideas. It's about supporting the staff, asking questions, being approachable, being available. I think that's how I think that's what the crux of the culture is. The communication, the open and honest communication between everybody, and being available to talk to people at all times. If you're running around busy and not haven't got time, then no one's going to come and tell you when things aren't working out or when they need a hand with something. And
Yeah, I think that's right. It's definitely underrated, that ability, that time to reflect or be available. Somebody's got to do that, Tom.
Yeah.
And typically it really needs to be the leader of the business. Often it's the founder of the business, but it's one of the intangibles about leadership. It's one of the hidden secrets about taking the time, reflecting, and actually being there to support and guide your people. When you were scaling your White Sky business, there was a moment that you would have sat down and reflected on and made some much more longer term plans. You started to work more on the business rather than in the business. Was there a moment like that, or how did you go about that?
Well, yeah, there was the other, I guess, big moment was, of course, COVID. We lost something like 45% of our work overnight because we were working with touring artists, and all of their work ended. So everything we did for them, well, not everything, but a lot of what we were doing for them, it just stopped, and so that was really hard. And so then we were in just survival mode for a year and a half, or 2 years, or whatever. Yeah. And then when we came out of the other side of that, we're all a bit weathered and a bit broken a bit. And when I say we all, I mean the senior partnership team of 5 or 6 of us. And we got in a room and we kind of said, right, let's do a little strategy session. We'd done strategy sessions in the past. We bring someone in to sort of do a whiteboards and all of that stuff. But this one was sort of more soul searching. This was more, we've been together a long time. We love each other. We trust each other. What do we really want as individuals?
Now we're coming out the other side. Yeah.
And it kind of came down to two options. Okay. It was like, do we? And because we were also realizing that we had kind of not outgrown the music industry as much as we'd just grown to a sort of almost to a limit. It felt like that anyway. So the options were: do we expand internationally and start trying to, set up an office in New Zealand or in the US or UK or something like that, or do we diversify outside of music? Yeah. And we decided to do the not go international. Yeah. I actually wanted to do the international option.
I'm probably, if I was in the room with you, I'm thinking, international sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, that was I was outvoted, and but I thought that was the way it was. Like I'm the founder and the the main shareholder or whatever, and the managing director and stuff. But that's how important these guys were and still are. Is that we needed to sort of all be doing this together. I didn't want to be dragging them into something they didn't want to do. So that was the decision. And then we talked a lot about how we could do that. And do we change the brand and and try and or do we just sort of just gradually change it, film and TV, and do sort of arts, and we sort of dabbled with a little bit here and there until we sort of got to the realization that the best way to do this is to partner with another firm. Yeah. And it can't just be a referral arrangement. It was like, no, we need someone who's actually invested in what we're doing, and vice versa. We need to,
bring some strategic value to each other.
So it's a merger or an acquisition or something like that. So was it? So the exit plan didn't really come from me thinking I want to exit. I'm done. I want out.
Another phase of growth.
Exactly.
For the business.
It was it was another phase of growth. Good. And it was. And so that's what we were looking for. And it didn't necessarily. So it wasn't like we went out going, right, we want to sell. Who wants to buy? It was like we've got a skill set. We've got a plan. Yeah. Who wants to partner with us?
Yeah. And, so you really had quite a clear set of at least headline criteria.
Yeah. Yeah. Although it wasn't necessarily like we were definitely open and not naive enough to think would you just call the shots. It wasn't that I went out saying this is the strategy. Who wants to come on the journey with me? It was more me saying this is the value that we bring. This is what we've got. Yeah. And it was good systems, good services, a lot of good happy customers. But as you sort of touched on before, a really good leadership team who are committed to each other and committed to what we're doing and want to continue to grow. Yeah. And if you've got if you've got the other part of that dynamic,
almost, and connected together, then away you go.
Then it can work. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about looking for being quite strategic about the reason why you're exiting, which can be different reasons. It's okay to sell your business or exit. and take some money off the table. But if you're looking for a growth strategy, you need to be very clear about what you bring to the table.
That's it.
And what type of partner you want to marry yourself up with.
I think and so if someone is out there thinking about, selling the business, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
It takes a long time because you need to work out what it is you actually want and I'll be able to articulate that and then set the business up accordingly. So in our case, it was set the business up ready to grow and once the jigsaw puzzle is connected, it might be for someone else who wants to just retire. It could be set the business up so it can operate without me, it's whatever the exit type you want, that takes time and that's
it crystallizes another moment of self-reflection to really go, well, what am I selling? What is it? And what's the reasons?
Yes.
And some of those things might not have surfaced in the normal course of what you're doing. So, hypothetically, it's not a bad decision for a business owner to sit there and say, well, I don't want to sell now, but if I wanted to sell in the future, why would I? And what would that want to be? And try and track yourself towards that, because I see that as a successful trait for entrepreneurs who do manage to exit, that they've thought about what, some of those strategic, emotional, personal and financial reasons around why they're doing that.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah. Why would someone want to buy this business?
Yeah.
What's
that's right, because it's a challenging question, because sometimes you're so sure within yourself, but you need to be able to put it in a way that actually can be expressed and understood by others to actually help them have a deep understanding of what you've got to offer.
Yeah.
And, we certainly kind of felt that or realized that when we met you, it was kind of clear to us around what you were trying to do and what you were trying to achieve. And there was a good fit there.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Tom, it's been awesome to spend some time talking with you this morning. It's been great to revisit some of our journey, but also really, informative and great for me to sort of learn from you and some of the things that you've experienced along the way as an entrepreneur who's scaled a business over many years. Once again, thanks for the chat. Hope you have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.